regret to inform you that the libertarians are at it again. Their primary publication, Reason Magazine, ran a piece this week decrying news that U.S. school children experienced some learning loss during the pandemic. Earlier this month, the National Center for Education Statistics conducted a study on the reading and math scores of 9-year-old students during the pandemic. They found is that average scores in reading declined by 5 points in 2022 compared to before the pandemic. That's the largest drop since 1990. And there was a 7-point drop in mathematics. First time that group has ever recorded a drop. Now, this really shouldn't surprise anyone. Remote learning isn't nearly as effective in reaching kids as in-class teaching. The pandemic was an extremely traumatic event. It still is, and it's upended the lives of millions and millions of people. Little learning loss for kids is to be expected in that environment. During a pandemic, trade-offs needed to be made in order to save lives. Much better to have a student who's a little behind on their math scores than one who's dead. But not according to the libertarians, who see the data as a catastrophic policy failure. Reason argued, quote, "The devastating learning loss suffered by American children over the past 2 years was not inevitable. It was the result of choices made by COVID panicked teachers' unions and progressive politicians who failed to carefully consider the educational damage at stake." Yeah, I mean, sure, we could have kept schools open during the height of the pandemic in 2020, and maybe instead of more than 1 million dead, we'd have 2 or 3 million dead. Would that have been preferred over a small dip in math and reading scores? To the dipshits at Reason, I guess so. Of course, what they fail to consider is that too would have come with significant learning loss. Kids tend not to do well in school when their parents are dying. And an estimated 200,000 children in the US have been orphaned because one or more guardians were killed off by COVID. That's according to research from the Imperial College of London. So, how is that not factored in as a cause for learning loss? Again, no question that taking classes over Zoom hinders learning, but so too does suffering tragedy. And there's been a lot of that over the last few years. There were always going to be trade-offs during the pandemic. In the United States, more than most countries, accepted a lot of death in order to keep the economy open. The most death in the world, in fact. But not enough to satisfy the free market fetishists at Reason Magazine, apparently. Hey, thanks for watching. Hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any of our new videos. Also, if you want to see Means Morning News in its complete form, not just the clips we post here, head on over to Means TV and get access to all our new episodes and our entire backlog, plus tons of other great movies and original TV shows.